Haggai Klorman has built the most amazing campaign for brands like L'Oreal, Revlon, Unilever, Tom's, about social media and about word of mouth. We're going to talk about his work. We're going to talk about what he's doing today, technology. We're going to talk as well about TikTok, the good and the bad. Enjoy the conversation with Haggai Klorman. Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Business of Meeting podcast. And today I have the great pleasure of speaking with a friend, an entrepreneur, is also an EO. He's in EO Israel, and he's an amazing tech entrepreneur. He's building businesses. He's building consulting with L'Oreal, with Tom's, with other major companies. When I talk about when it comes to word of mouth campaign, he's advising Bain Capital, private equity. He's got his own company, cards, doing electronic or digital business card. And he's got a view on TikTok. I mean, the guy is just, I don't know how many things he's done in his life. He's probably got a twin brother that we don't know about. And we're going to discover that today. Haggai, thank you so much. Haggai Klorman, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you, Eric. My pleasure.
So it's we had the pleasure of actually meeting each other with EO, and obviously after what happened on October 7, which I'm sure we're going to talk as well. But before we get there, I mentioned so many big names, so many companies, so many things. When did you start in tech? What is your journey?
So my first entrepreneurial activity was in summer camp in the United States. I think it was between fourth and fifth grade, or fifth and sixth grade. Where I noticed a market gap that you could not get sodas during the day, and the only opportunity was to go to the cafeteria. So I borrowed some money from my parents, and for the life of me, I remember how much the cafeteria charged. The cafeteria charged $1.15 for a can of Coke, and if I remember correctly, at the time you can buy it for 25 cents in the supermarkets. I said, amazing margin. I put it in my backpack. And I started going around during the day and selling it off. And he taught me a lot of things. One, that when you're the only player in town, you make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Two, be careful who you give credit to because they don't always pay. And three, beware of the government. Because at some point they called me in and they said, we have to shut you down. We're hearing complaints. They shut me down somewhere like week 2 of our operations. But I walked away with, I don't remember the dollar amount, but it was hundreds of percents in profit. So that was a great experience. So that's kind of how my journey began. And it continued because even though I have 4 degrees, I am dyslexic. I have a law degree in economics. I have a master in finance and an MBA from Boston College. But I always felt insecure of myself because of my dyslexia. So I've never gone the normal path, and kind of found myself always doing something a little different. So when I was studying law and economics, I was also working full-time in IBM. And I was the head of IT security at IBM when I was a student. And then I moved to business development, and then I went to do my MBA. So that's kind of the story. That's how the story begins. And then it kind of continues.
Hold on. Before you get further, so you have dyslexia and you have those 4 degrees.
I have those 4 degrees, yeah.
It's phenomenal. I mean, you remind me of Richard Branson, who also have dyslexia and is very successful. So is that somehow twitching your brain in a way that you're learning faster or differently, or you can do several things at once? It's fascinating.
So here's my take of it, right? So it's a personal take. I think there's a bit of a survivorship bias, right? So I think there's a bit of survivorship bias. I think many entrepreneurs have some sort of learning disability, sometimes difficult background. So let's say hardship, right? Let's call it in the general hardship. So, but there's also a lot of dyslexic people in the prison, right? I'm just giving it as a contract. So it's not necessarily that if you're dyslexic, you will go to prison. It's not necessarily if you're dyslexic, you'll be Richard Branson. But there's something about the ability to deal with hardship and the willingness to take pain on a daily basis that's amazing training for an entrepreneur. Because if we're trying to avoid the BS description of entrepreneurship, right? And as a fellow entrepreneur, you know this, it's 99% being kicked in the nuts, right? And 1%, yay, amazing. That's like this. You're laughing. And I think that most people that have not tried to run a business, manage people, deal with a market, deal with business crises, what the world changes, deals with it, don't quite necessarily understand that. And you know what? Good for them. So going back to the dyslexic conversation, if you go out dyslexic, you are used to uncertainty. Okay? You are used to a kind of figuring things out. You're kind of used to, finding different ways to go to get things done, right? And in a way, you're used to, let's call it social pain, situational pain, being outside of the box. And that's why I think a lot of entrepreneurs, you would find some sort of background. So some sort of background that kind of resonates with that.
Very
Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. I always say that it's fascinating to me that the majority of people in general, they prefer misery to uncertainty, and certainly not entrepreneurs, to your point about dealing with uncertainty. So you're head of security of IBM, and you're still a student?
I was an IT architect of cybersecurity, which at the time was... I got out of the army, and at the time, my knowledge in cybersecurity was in the top 5 percentile at the time. I do not pretend to have this title now. So many things have changed, but at the time, I was on the cutting edge of cybersecurity knowledge.
And you're still a student?
And I was a student because, as you might know, in Israel, you first go to the army. And then you go out to the world, right? And some people travel, some people go straight to college, some people work and then travel, go to college. And I decided I want to study. I decided I want to work immediately. And I was an officer and I was a soldier, but I did practical, useful security stuff, and that would translate very well to the market. And my colleagues were 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds, and I was like this, 20-year-old guy, 20-something-year-old guy, that is like trying to study and work at the same time. And as you might remember, your 20s, you didn't really need to sleep at the time.
True.
So that was possible. I strongly not recommend doing 2 degrees at the same time and holding a full-time position when your colleagues are 40-year-olds. It's not recommended, but if you're willing to do it, deal with the pain, the uncertainty, and all that, it's very interesting.
That's amazing. And already at that time, you're thinking about starting your own business, or you're looking at a career in corporations?
That was always my interest to some extent. I say for my father's side, I'm a third-generation entrepreneur, and for my mother's side, my grandfather was a pioneer of Israel, which is also a form of entrepreneurship. Yeah. So I think that I don't know if I, predetermined destiny, kind of in a way, and that I know that was always in the back of my mind. And even if you think about the job I held, it was a quote unquote a student job. It was just not a student role, right? Just like that was sort of so.
And how did you?
I didn't think I had a choice. I had a choice.
Well, yeah, but how did you end up working for L'Oreal, for Unilever, for Revlon, for Tom's,
sure,
and doing word of mouth campaign?
Okay, so I'll give a background story very quickly, and then we'll talk about
yes,
the other regions.
Yeah.
So when I went to Boston College and I got my Master in Finance and MBA, and as your audience is familiar with the graduate studies in the States, but they encourage people to do informational interviews with alumni. So you go to an alumni, they interview you, not necessarily for a job, but if they kind of like you, they do, not exactly mentorship, but they would, hey, let me like meet this guy. Maybe I can find a position in the company and so on. And I was interviewing in State Street Bank, and this information interview in State Street Bank. And during this interview, in the end of the interview, I asked the guy, like, hey, what's your interest? What are you trying to do? And said, hey, I have the subsidiary in this other country, and I need to sell it. And I said, okay, I heard you. And 2 weeks later, I call him back and I say, I have a buyer for your subsidiary. And 2 weeks after that, the deal was done. And I told myself, oh, I don't really need to find a job after my studies. I can do this. And of course, this has never been as easy. And it followed something like a stint of 3 years or so, but basically entrepreneurial finance, partnered with small medium investment banks, did a little work in the oil and gas space, did a little work on technology transfer. But I didn't go to Goldman Sachs. I didn't go to anyone's thing. It was like, oh, here's a deal, here's connections. I know this guy. Let's put together. Let's team up. Let's get a retainer. That kind of hustle and bustle. But it was mostly around deal making and finance. And then I was in Israel, and I met my wife, who was just coming back from 3 years in London, and we hit it off. We were getting married, and then she started talking about her idea. And at the time, the idea was to do a smart machine learning recommendation engine for beauty products. Okay. Now, it's actually not that important because it was, from a technology point of view, it was a total failure. But what worked was the marketing. And the marketing was user-generated content, influencer content. Okay. And we built at the time, this was the Facebook period. So this is when Facebook was hot. At the time, we organically built, let's say, a page that had something like 1.7 million followers at the time, okay, which was a big deal. It's like the equivalent of having, I don't know, 10 million on Instagram nowadays. Now, it's meaningless today in Facebook because of the algorithm and all that and the differential, but that's what we did. And that kind of worked. And then I hate this word sometimes, but we pivoted to, hey, this is valuable. This is valuable to companies. So from a purely technology company, we kind of went and basically took our know-how and offered that to brands. Now, this was before the word influencer was prevalent. Okay, so if we even look at our old contract, it said content creator and things like that. It says like the word content because there was no word to that thing that's influencer. Even though today I think it's still a verified. And over a decade of work, we developed a know-how supporting technologies of how you get people, and I'm stressing the word people because content creators, users, and influencers, they are people to go and talk about your brand. Now, there were tricks and technology and processes, but at the core, the core thing is a human connection at scale, which goes like this, is one. If, let's say, I want to promote a lipstick, a specific lipstick, right? Eric, you're probably not my target audience. Okay?
Probably not.
Probably not. Again, I don't know, unless there's something I don't know. Okay? But that's fine. So first of all, match to the person. It's the same thing. Don't try to, the same way I would not try to sell you lipstick. I will not try to get you to create content. So rule number one, approach people who do what you expect them to do already. Okay? So that would be people that are interested in lipstick, people that already create content in lipstick, right? Now, this is before how many followers they have, or anything of a sort, right? And then it's like, now you go to nuances, size of followers, type of content, quality of content, and it's defined, and so on. And then you reach out, you explain to the people why you reach out, you make a compelling argument, you ship them the product, which is usually what it is, you get them to create content. Okay, that's the basis of it. The basis of it. Now, so how does that move from something tactical to something strategic? Okay, because if you engage people in a meaningful way, and you do it organically, they will become fans. And if those fans are content creators already, meaning they create compelling content, and if they have following, aka distribution, and if they have influence, aka actually the ability to make somebody make a different decision or consider a different decision, over time, you have impact. And even if one person doesn't have all three, if you get 100 people, even 1,000 people within those categories, then that makes a business impact,
So
And that
how
took us time to articulate. But that was the core of the work. And it just like before your question, it just like ring. And we specialized in programs, but you do not pay. We did some of them. Okay, we did paid programs. We did programs that it was much more like I'm hiring a model, and there is a reason to do that. So for example, so if I'm a Gucci-like brand, right, meaning that I would be that, and I'm saying it might sound cynical, but that is the need of a client, right? But I mean in the sense that if somebody would be fired if the brand is not represented in a very certain way, because that's really important to the client and to the brand, then they would use paid.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because it's a contract between the brand and the influencer, the content creator, to create content in a very specific brief or in a very specific way. It's not necessarily the most effective, but it's what the clients want. So we did few of them, but 90% of our operations was the organic ones, building relationships on scale. You had a question, Eric.
Yeah, just to follow up with that, how do you manage to build those relationships on scale? Because you're not talking an entrepreneur that is starting his company or that has a certain number, I don't know, 10, 20 employees. You're talking like huge firm, like big firms.
So on the client side, we just started building track records, and you could see and you could show, right? And we were early on and so on. And also, to be very, very frank, if a client wanted paid programs, we were okay. If a client wanted organic programs, I think we were the best.
That's the most
If not the
sustainable,
best, one
right?
of the best. Yes, but you have to remember people have different interests, right? It's like everything. I have a specific quota. My CEO wants to see Kim Kardashian post and people with 1 million posts, and that's it, and I don't care. I'm not willing to wait 6 months to build up a program, right? And again, I'm not knocking it. It's like we know that in the corporate world, there's a bunch of different considerations, but sometimes make sense and sometimes don't make sense, or sometimes they're a mix of, right? Mix of constraints and things that want to make sense. And that's fine. So, but like, okay, here's one campaign after another campaign after another, and you can literally, and the benefit of what we did, it was public. So you could literally show both numbers and content in content. So that's on the client side. On the influencer content creator side, what we've learned is that you always have to build it anew, and that's why it takes time.
You always have
you always have to build relationships anew. So I'll give an example. So I'll give two examples. So one an extreme. So we had a maternity product. Okay, maternity product. And interesting enough, women do not stay pregnant. I don't know what's about this. They're pregnant and then they stop being pregnant. So the fact that you did a program with this person 3 months ago doesn't mean they were now. And you have to go find pregnant content creators, influencers.
Yeah.
How do you do it? A combination of technology and people, right? People, content creators use expecting hashtags. You go, you get the data, you go. So you can literally have somebody think of like a Vogue editorial shoot. Just the person doesn't know their into considerations. You go, you look at the profiles. We see, are they pregnant because they posted about it? Right. And again, this part is very manual and very non-invasive in the sense that you're not getting some secret data. You're only looking at what's public. But that's literally like sometimes 3-4 people, but all they do is like literally search the social networks for content creators that are pregnant, right? There's no, that's not. So that's a one example. Second, every program and every client has some nuances. It's very important for me to have people in the West Coast. It's very important to have people from certain demographics. Okay, so and then you kind of have to invent your data set or let's say lead set anew. Lead set. So if you're familiar with the B2B process, it's very similar, right? You have leads, you have prospects. So the leads are, do you have a good quality leads, right? Prospects, it's somebody that you engage. Did you convince them to sign up to the program, to the call? Did they actually buy into the program? Did they actually use it, right? Did they actually participate in creating program? And you have a funnel, and then how good you are is how well you move people through the funnel, and what's your conversion. Conversion, of course, is the client happy in top of that. So just to give a sense of numbers, so let's say in 1 year, we had active communications with 200,000 content creators and influencers. Okay, like we had the back and forth. Like I looked at the CRM and I analyzed all the communications. Okay, and still every program you had to start anew, right? You maybe 25% of a pool came from a different program, maybe 30% of a pool. Why? Either availability, interest, or need of a program and the client. And that was very interesting work. It also required a lot of creative thinking and understanding both of the client and the product on one hand, and also the persona and the person. So that's what I'm saying. At the end of the day, it's a human thing, right? And it's very similar to, like, I would say, I don't know, ethical sales, right? But you're trying to actually sell something to a person that actually needs it to something. But the difference is here, there's no exchange of money in most parts. Sometimes you give money, sometimes. But for the most part, we specialize in can we connect this person with this brand? And then can we get this person to be a fan of a brand in the context that they post more than Y times? Now, why non-paid programs on the long run are better is because when we transact and I say, I'm going to pay you for 3 posts, right? How many posts are you going to do?
3 posts?
But if you don't have contract and I manage to convince you, I didn't manage to convince you because I managed to actually match you with a brand and a product that you love. How many posts are you going to do?
Probably more.
Probably more. And that was the case. And you could see it around the numbers. You literally could see, and I had presentation. Here's a paid program, here's a non-program. 3 posts per person, 2 posts per person, 10 posts, 7 posts.
Yeah.
And also and if you really want to get to minutia, brands usually pay, they're very specific. I want 3 posts on Instagram for this money. But our platforms. And then and this guy does 3 posts on Instagram, 2 stories, 3 on TikTok, here on YouTube. It's not my big platform, but why the hell? I like it. I'm trying to build it. I'm going to post about it and so on.
What was your most successful campaign in terms of social word of mouth? And what did you do exactly for that?
Okay, I'll tell you one that comes to mind immediately. It actually was a small brand. It was actually a small brand. And I give it as an example as most successful because I think it's fundamentally changed. So it was a hair product. And the client's demographic was for the most part 40-year-olds and up. That was it. So it was the entrepreneurs were relatively mature in terms of age. The product had a little older feel, but it was an amazing, very interesting product. Okay, and we did a TikTok campaign for that. And again, it took 3 months. And again, there's a subtext here, but we make a point to take products and brands that we can stand behind, right? Because otherwise it doesn't work. So it can't be bad. It has to be good, and it has to be good to a certain audience, right? Not to everybody, but a certain audience. But it was a very interesting product for any woman with hair, basically. And we went, and it was a very, very, very difficult initial 3 months because it had 0 social presence. And it was a bit old, the look and feel, not the technology, not the things, and that. And then something magical started happening in month 3. In month 3, you can see that I have to go back a second. So what happens? You work very, very hard to convince the first content creators. And the first content creators, while good content creators, will usually have a low following. Why? Because they have less competition. Because people with 1 million followers, let's say, they get bombarded with a lot of questions and interests. Okay. So then we build a pool of a few tens, maybe we got to 100 people. Maybe we got to 100 people the first 3 months, but created content. And they loved the program. So they loved the product. And then we took that content and showed it to additional people. And then and we'll talk about more if we talk about TikTok. The benefit of TikTok specific things go viralish every once in a while. Things go viralish. And then we took that content that was created by somebody with 1,000 and reached out to somebody with 3,000. And then we took that content to somebody with 10,000 and so on and so on. And every time you're able to say, look, somebody like you, that you might even know, right? Because everybody's kind of looking at everybody, like the product, isn't part of a program. So somewhere in month 6, we had people with 1 million followers participate in the program. And this brand became a social brand. Now, business impact. We had to stop a program for 1 month. I think it was month 4 or 5 because they ran out of products. Okay. And again, this was a small brand. So like even, let's say, a big uptick in sales was actually, they didn't match the inventory, which again was very frustrating for us because we had to build this again. And the second thing, so, as the entrepreneur, and somebody who does also sales, you get on the call with other brands and you show them different, like what you're working on. And like I get on the call and the woman I'm talking to, who's the CMO of this other brand, says, oh, I saw it on TikTok and I bought the product. Wow. And then you're doing something good, right? It's like this combination of things. So that was very interesting because you can see how you kind of make an effect, because the brand was small enough that a success, you could literally see that, like the business being changed. And as I mentioned earlier, the average customer base was 40, and they said that the average age dropped to 30 and down of our customers. So you could actually see that making a business impact. Yeah. We've had programs with much very interesting intellectually. I'll give another example. So Revlon at the time wanted to reach out to a lot more African Americans, Black Americans in the US, because we were underrepresented in the program. And we basically made that happen. Okay. And actually it was very nice to see, because Revlon it may be not be as famous as some of our other brands, or it doesn't have, but it still has a brand equity. And you can see that the content creators were never approached, because one of the reasons they didn't have a lot of African Americans in the client base, because the brand didn't approach that much. I don't think it was intentionally to disregard. It just wasn't the focus for a period of time or whatever. But you could see that the influencers, as the clients, right, as in the clients in this case, were so excited that a brand like Revlon was reaching out for them, and it was actually a very feel good program, because it was just almost like connecting between a brand and a demographic that just didn't have a chance to interact. And the products we were promoting were very good, and that was also very, very, very nice. But but still, a big company, it's very difficult to on a small few months program to see how much you make a big impact. So I always think about the smaller brands, because in the smaller brands you can actually see oh, we move the needle.
Right.
We move the needle.
If I hear you well, I mean, a lot of people that are listening to this podcast are business owners in the meetings and event industry. So there's not necessarily the largest corporation like a Revlon. But you have to look at a minimum of 3-4 months before seeing any results, and then maybe say, I'm going to do it for 6 months.
So I'll answer the question and tell me if it's a question. So let's say you are a business owner, and let's assume you're almost any business, but sells to other people, right? Not bits and bytes, not electricity connections, but you have B2B-C kind of elements at least, right? So if there are many B2B or a B2C, here's the checklist to think about, okay? 1, what is your objective? Okay. So what are reasonable objectives to get from content creation, influencer marketing, programs? Number one, content creation. Okay, so it might be very important for you to have content. Okay, like you don't have content. Okay, because it's very expensive for you. It's maybe very expensive for you to do a photo shoot, or you don't know how to manage it, or you do a photo shoot, but it's very limited type of assets, and it's just important for you to have content. That's a very reasonable goal, right? It's a very reasonable goal, and it's doable, right? It's a very doable goal. And then you can figure out the ROI, right? So let's say if you need content tomorrow and you need it, especially in a UGC like format, meaning it looks like a user generated and not like a professional, maybe you go to one of those platforms and you pay $20 to, 30 people and then 30 pieces of content or 60 or maybe even 100 pieces of content, you're happy and that's it, right? That's a very legitimate way to go, right? And this is by the way, regardless if it's a paid or organic through inorganic means. That's how I like to define it. So that's option number one. Option goal number two, let's call it some brand awareness. Okay, meaning some people will see it. They're not necessarily gonna buy it. They're not necessarily gonna buy it. It's not gonna influence. So that's a combination of, okay, I'm getting people to create, I'm getting to people to talk about the product. I'm getting people to talk about the product. So why is that important? Why is that good? If you are a longer play, meaning it's not a quarter, not a month, but you have slightly longer view, you want, and if it's important to you, that when people look you up, not only on Google, but they look you up on the social media, your hashtag is populated, right? It's like there's some presence to your product. So if you're a consumer goods company, for sure that is important because that's how people, they look you up. How does your social channel look? How are people talking about you? So that's objective number two. Objective number three is actual selling. Okay.
Sorry?
Actually selling, getting sales to happen.
Yeah.
And the only way to get sales to happen, from my experience, is through one of those means. One, it's a content creator influencer that has a proven record to selling your stuff. Not even your category, your stuff. That's very, very rare. And the only way really to be sure about this is to work with people, okay, and figure it out. So you either you manage to do the unpaid model for a while, see that something works, and then pay somebody to be like some sort of freelancer model, right? That's option one. Option two is that you have a budget and you kind of try to, like you're hiring a bunch of freelancers till something clicks. And that's also legitimate. There are also techniques to try to optimize that, but that's very advanced. Okay. And the second option is to get lucky and to go viral. It's to get lucky and to go viral. Now, it's a strategy, but it's to get to that, you have to get to quantity and quality. You have to get a combination of quantity and quality. So if I'm taking the example of a hair product, we got hundreds of influencers to post many times in different types, and few things went viralish and a few things went viral. But we got to scale, we get to quality scale, and specifically on TikTok, which you have a greater chance of getting viral, and that spikes sales.
Got it.
Spikes sales. Side note, not all virality is sales because it needs to be relevant virality. Because if I put on funny clothes and dance, that might go viral, but that's probably not going to sell anything. Okay, it just will be amusing.
The best example I have in mind is the guy who launched the Dollar Shave Club and did this crazy video for which apparently he paid $4,500, rented a warehouse, and wrote the script. And it was so funny that everybody started sharing it, and that's how he launched the business.
But that's not UGC. That's like marketing, content marketing done well. That's content marketing, and that was his skill set. Their background was to do those things. And again, amazing. And of course, you get a bit lucky. And of course, then you get a bit lucky, right?
I understand, but it's not user generated. That's right.
That's what you generate. And the third way to get the set, you just get to such large scale that it's just almost impossible for something to happen. Meaning it's like it's kind of ties to virality, but if you got 10,000 of relevant people but create content in your space to create 5 posts in the next 3 months, the chance of you not selling something is zero.
Mm.
Okay, unless there's something wrong in your site, right? That's kind of thing, right? If you think about it, if the number is big enough, it's almost an impossibility that, like, even if it's 0.05% conversion rate, nothing's going to happen. So that's kind of the ways to think about it. But notice that there's no silver bullet, right? Even the example that you brought is a silver bullet because it worked, but it might not have worked, and video 5 might have worked, right? So, and anybody, and I think the best analogy I can say that's probably more relevant to entrepreneurs, most entrepreneurs understand the sales process. So content creation UGC campaigns are much closer to the sales process. You have to build a good funnel that you get to quantity and quality. Enough leads, meaning enough pieces of content and enough creators and influencers creating content. Quality, but it's the content represents your brand and your product, and it's good content, whatever that means, right? Whatever that means. Okay. And then you just increase the chances of something happening. But the likelihood that you'll sell to Intel on the first call is low, unless you already have a presence. Which, for example, Kim Kardashian can launch a brand and in day one make a lot of noise, even without working too hard. And if she works hard, she'll make a lot of noise. Right? But if you're not Kim Kardashian or its equivalent, you probably have to work for it.
Yeah.
That's okay. Just have to work for it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Haggai, when it comes to TikTok, I cannot not ask you that, because before October 7th, I had a lot of people telling me TikTok in China, they are showing educational content. And in the rest of the world, they are basically creating dumb people sharing stupid stuff all the time. But yes, it's getting viral. And 6th October 7 and the massacre, the pogrom that Hamas did in Israel, we've seen the damage that TikTok is doing. And no later than yesterday, I was reading, and I just want to read this and have your opinion on that.
Yeah.
It says the following: the Wall Street Journal did an expose on TikTok, setting up 9 fictitious accounts of 13 years old. And within 60 videos, all of them were shown videos about the war in Israel. And then 5 of the 9 had their algorithm flooded with videos about the war. From those videos, 59% were pro-Palestine, 15% were pro-Israel, and 26% were neutral. Maybe this helps to explain why 1/3 of young Americans recently polled don't believe in Israel's right to exist. And I'm not even discussing the lies from the Palestinian videos. I'm just showing here that the algorithm. So what's your take on that, and what can be done?
Okay, so I actually studied this subject very, very deeply this past 2 months. And we didn't get into this, but I'll say where I'm coming from. I ran a BI team under my previous company that did very, very sophisticated social media analysis, including for the world's leading private equity firms like Bain Capital, Premier, General Atlantic. So I know at least a little, not perfect, but thinking about how things work in systems and in those platforms. Okay, this said, let's walk it one by one. The experience anecdotally, right? It's very, TikTok is a closed system. It's very difficult to get perfect information, but anecdotally, this seems to be true. That's one. 2, if you care about the subject matter, and again, I am a pro-Israeli, I am personally affected with this situation. And whatever you want to say about the government and its policies, whatnot, the fact that there's a narrative that challenges Israel's rights to exist and its expression on those social networks is frightening. Okay? It's frightening. It's very different to say, Israel, you need to do better, than Israel, you don't have a right to exist. Okay.
Yep.
So that's my axioms. Now, TikTok has around 1 billion active users, and a big chunk of them in the United States. Now, the reason I say this again is that you can't ignore it. Okay? So unless for some strange reason, Congress and the Senate decide to pull a law that bans TikTok, which I think it's a problematic issue by itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a problematic issue that says you have to think about it and deal with it.
Right.
And more so, it is the young generation. So why do I think this is happening? Reason number one, the majority of the content creators, meaning the people who create content on TikTok, are under the age of 24, okay? So as some of the recent polls that have been made public, that's the age group that, some say 51% say give Israel to Hamas, which is like not find a free two-state solution, not move a Palestinian authority, not give it to a terrorist organization. Now, I'm not arguing even before where that comes from, right? That is the sentiment. So statistically speaking, right, the likelihood of somebody that age group creating a pro-Israeli, I'm not even saying an anti-Israeli content, a pro-Israeli content is low statistically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so even though the users are distributed based on reports, it's like yes, the majority are under 24, but the rest of all the age groups, including myself, when I'm on TikTok, the content comes from an age group that is already likely to be anti-Israeli or at least not supportive, or to feel from the group, the colleagues that you shouldn't be Israeli supported. So that's the majority of the content that's being created. They're created. And that supports a narrative. That's number one. Second, this is third, okay. There are horrible things happening in Gaza. Let's not sugarcoat it, okay? I know, I decided I believe, that the owners of that misery are Hamas.
Of course.
Are Hamas. I mean, you say of course, right? But we have to explain that, right?
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
we have to explain that. And that's the exact point I'm trying to make, because it's you have to explain. Okay, so the fact that that Israel is attacking and those poor people and the poor civilians and so on, and Hamas is using them using shields and all those things, that's a complex thing. And TikTok is for memes, primarily.
Mm-hmm.
Simplicity. Good, bad.
Yeah.
Good, bad, good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. And TikTok is a trend. So just to finish your previous point, so it's not impossible, but it's difficult to address complex issues on TikTok, period. Not impossible, just difficult. And the next point is TikTok, by definition, is a trend amplifier. You probably, even you, which you're not necessarily the demographic, have heard about TikTok trends. That's a concept. That's embedded into the behavior in TikTok. A trend gets amplified. A trend gets repeated. That's like what the relationship between the user, the creator, and the platform. Something is going on with a funny dance, I'm going to do it. Something very sexy is happening with a certain song, I'm going to do it. There's a narrative, there's a meme that is repeating itself, and it's a platform that does that very, very well. So if anti-Israeli colonialism, which I'm sorry, like what the fuck, okay? But my great-grandfather from Yemen is not a white colonialist,
No.
okay?
Yeah.
The fact that Jesus was a Jew, people forget that, right? He was here, like all those things. But it has nothing to do with facts. But it's a narrative that exists, and even if it's somewhat popular, TikTok takes it to the next level because it trains the behavior of people to repeat, to flow again and again and again. Okay, so all those things together become the situation very problematic. I'm really interested to find partners to try to address this, because I don't think you can ignore TikTok. And in my personal opinion, and based on my experience in these platforms, yes, like the PR and the educations are important and all those things. I'm not knocking them. People are doing, and some of our colleagues, like some of them we know, but they're doing a wonderful, amazing job. But the issue with education, and please understand and see and hear and like understand that this happened and this looks so, they require a willingness to listen. It requires somebody to either pick up a new trend or be opening to hear something that is not in the trend. another trend. And I think that as long as we do not do something similar to what I described in my previous work before, which is reach out with truth, with truth. But that's maybe not the core truth, not what we think is the core truth. It's like, hey, I'm Haggai, I'm Jewish, I'm not a hobo murderer. Okay, let's start with that. Hey, this is Steve. Okay, Steve is not Jewish, and he loves to come to Tel Aviv and to be in the gay parade, and he feels like it's his second home.
Absolutely.
It's like a second home. And let's start and then hopefully people say, listen, Haggai is not a raging murderer. Neither is his son, and neither is Steve, or Adam, or Stephanie, and all those people that have come to Israel for over years, right? So I think so. Wait a second, maybe it's a little more complex.
Yeah.
Maybe I should just listen a bit of that. Now, the techniques to do it is to play within the rules of a platform. But I really think that is needed, and I really hope to find one or two partners that are willing to work with me on this. Because going back to our earlier conversation, this is the long play.
Yeah.
This is not like the now. This is not like what people are doing now, and it's very important to do now, right? It's like the immediate responses, getting things out when there's a lie, when there's a problem, getting that information out and that position out. Because if they say Israel bombed the hospital and we did it, you don't try to do the long play. You need to explain it right now.
Yeah.
You need to explain it right now. And I'll add one small things, okay? But I think this is only the people who already understand and care will appreciate. There's horrible pictures in Gaza that are being put on TikTok. And some of them are real and some of them are not. But there's enough real, right? Like, let's not ignore those civilians that are in dipshit and due to Hamas policies and so on. But the human suffering is real. Let's not ignore that. Okay? The footage of October 7th, for the most part, is so horrible that TikTok will not let you display it.
Yeah.
Okay?
I actually heard that they were boycotting some of the content that was coming from Israel, or just explaining what happened.
So this is way before that. I'm going to say something very fundamental. Most of the world, the TikTok world, has never seen the images and the videos from October 7th on TikTok because they're so horrible that the algorithm will not let you upload them. Okay? And the pictures from Gaza are bad, very bad, with real human suffering, but they're not that horrible that the algorithm and the censorship would stop them. This is before any perceived bias or any argument of bias. Because I don't know how brutal you want to be in this, but the raping of women and while they're being butchered, and you can edit this out if this is too hard in this podcast, I'm not sure, will not make it to the upload.
Yeah. But is it the algorithm or is it a human intervention?
This is way before that. This is even just like the content piece. This is before judgment, right? This is before 100. The same way that will not let you upload any model. They won't let you like nudity. They won't let you like straight nudity. They won't let you upload blood. Like all those things, right? So it never gets out. Okay, and also we also have an interest to protect some of the families with,
of course,
with content. So this is also a sub piece of this, because the very bad pictures are not bad enough. And I know this is like a very dangerous conversation, because this is like pain comparison. But the images from Gaza, there's enough bad images from Gaza that are really bad, but the algorithm allows you. Let's say the automatic censorship, but the majority of October 7th videos are so horrible, you can't even upload them.
But is it the algorithm or is it the human intervention?
So, yes. Now let's talk about the human. Now let's talk about the human intervention, or let's say the bias. So I've heard people say, and again, people say, okay, you know what? I'll say this in a more. I'll say in a more without rumors. Okay, I'll say two things. That's a little more absolutely. I'm not sure, but somebody's China sitting down and thinking, "Oh, we need to make sure this goes badly." Okay, but I'm pretty sure that somebody's sitting in China and they're not sensitive to being fair or objective as Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, regardless of their personal views. Okay? It just felt not the same again. So it can even be kind of just a bit of an indifference. So if something is going on, there's a slightly indifference, or we don't really have that strong of an opinion about this. Even this is before even blaming anybody to a bias. But not only that, so let's assume what I'm saying is true. So even somebody in the, let's say, middle ranks, if they do have an ability to somehow affect those things, okay, they might do it because nobody told them to do anything else. Okay.
Yeah, right.
On the other hand, if like somebody in Twitter or Facebook or Instagram clearly, blatantly played with the definitions of the hashtags or any of the things, and they found out that they would hit them with a hammer, right? Unless it was official legal policy of a company, okay?
Right.
They would bang the head. I'm not sure that the head of people in the middle management on Twitter in Africa or whatever are necessarily being told by by the headquarters in China, you must make sure that everything's equitable. Now, I'm sure more so today than before because they have been criticized, but not say in the beginning. But I can give you one anecdotal thing, okay? One anecdotal example, which is absolute subjective truth because it's a small test that I did. There was Ask Danny. He's a very talented Israeli creator, and he created a very, very good TikTok video explaining and showing the trend of, I don't know what to call them, idiots, delusional Americans supporting Osama bin Laden. Okay?
Yeah, I call them the useful idiots of the Nazi Islamist.
And he explained this video. He explained this story. Okay? He explained this story again. And at the time when I saw it, it was 40 something likes and a bunch of thousands of shares, right? Something like that. Like it was a very good video. And I had a conversation with somebody in Asia about this story, about this. And I went to share this video and said, like, nothing coming up, nothing I said, okay, the one on the mobile. Please try your desktop. Please try your desktop. They open it for desktop and say, this video is not available in your country. Okay? So I tried it with some of your European friends. Same thing. Nothing on mobile, no error, no nothing. And on desktop, no error. So is it possible that this specific video, again, I am in the end of the day, I explain, speculation, data-driven, and anecdotal evidence. So this is anecdotal. But you can't stop wondering, right?
And also you cannot stop wondering that somebody in China, when it comes to TikTok, has a specific interest in dividing us here in America, and that any topic, including that, will be leverage.
I don't know. I have to say, I don't know. Actually, my conspiracy theory is a lot more to do with middle management than thing. It's like,
Fair.
Go to the US. Does Mark Zuckerberg control Facebook and Instagram? No, he doesn't control it. Like, he has people all around. I mean, over time, he can move a ship to here. Like, here's the thing. But it's like, as we know, big organizations become like this. Before evil intent, assume incompetence. And before incompetence, assume politics, organizational politics. That's generally my association, any big corporation. Mm-hmm. Like I said, there's very few, let's say, evil corporations, okay? There's a lot more political corporations, and there's a lot more incompetent corporations that do things badly because they just don't think about it. They step on you because they just don't think about it. Kind of thing. That's my take. The thing is, like, you know what? We can be frustrated reading the Wall Street Journal and the reports or the studies that I've done, even anecdotally in this area, in the analysis that I've done. But I think it's like, but the issue is, it's like, you know what? Let's take Harvard as an example, right? You have two choices, kind of thing. You can even try to change Harvard, or you can try to undermine it, or you can try to ignore it. Okay? So, in my view, Harvard is not going anywhere. And as frustrating as it might be, if you ignore it, you let people win.
Absolutely.
You let the bad actors win. Absolutely. If you try to undermine it, you need to be ready to go to war like full time. And I don't think anybody's really willing to do that. Mm-hmm. What you have to do is, with all the frustration and all the sadness and all the tears and the blood and things, you need to try to change it. You need to try to change it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you one real story, okay, to kind of what I think that system, and I think maybe that's a good place to kind of take the sentiment home. A good friend of mine, she's a professor, and she has a daughter for the last few years has been an eco activist. Okay, she's 17 years old, and I think for the last 5 years, she's been green and activities and all those things. And when the war started, the global group picked her out from the WhatsApp group because they said she's a white colonialist, Jewish colonialist. And they kicked her out of the group. Now, she's not white, for that matter. And of course, she's not a colonialist. But let's put that aside. There was another guy in the management that was Jewish, and he said, if you don't bring her back, I'm going to quit. And then she wrote him something that he put to them using their language, and they brought her back. And my good friend comes to her, and she wants to be a good mom, and she wants to say, you shouldn't take this personally. And she says, no, Mama, everything's fine. Here's the thing. I know I'm not white. I know I'm not a colonialist, but I'm not going to let them kick me out and for me not to be there. And I'm willing to suffer them so they won't feel self-righteous and they won't think they're not doing something wrong. Because if I'm not there, they're going to feel self-righteous and to think that, woo.
Absolutely.
But if I'm there and I'm willing to take the insults and spits and have a conversation and I'm acting better than them, they cannot think they're self-righteous. They cannot think they're right.
On your point, it was interesting that people don't know, but in Israel, there's more than 50% of people of color, which is basically much more than America. But anyway, Haggai, we can go on with that. But
Yes.
I don't want to finish this conversation before letting you speak about Hate Checker that you started.
Checker. Sure.
And also, I want to end with what you do with cards.biz, because give you a little shout out as well. But let's first talk about the Hate Checker.
So Hate Checker. So I reached out to a good friend of mine who's from the security services, and they developed a machine learning and AI process, but basically using open intelligence can assess the commercial risk of a candidate or an employee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they build different models, and this has already been working, and they've been selling in Israel. And since October 7, we have been working together to kind of tweak the algorithm to also look at basically hate activity. Okay, hate activity. So now it's mostly focused on anti-Semitism and support to terrorism, but of course it can be expanded to KKK, general hate activity. And we're specifically more focused on the English language than English and Arabic than other languages, but the models have proven themselves, and we can go to Hungarian, German, and so on. And we've developed this product specifically to the US, which meets also one of the considerations is legal, meets the framework of the US legal structure and what's allowed in terms of privacy. But generally speaking, using open intelligence, meaning public information that the person has posted and so on, we are able to flag issues that a hiring manager should consider.
Amazing.
Now, we make a point never to say hire this person, not to hire this person.
Right.
Because I might share, or you might share, very difficult content, but in the context of what the hell is this? Why is this happening? Look at what's there, right? So, like the fact that I share, let's say, hateful content might be as an act of protest, right? Okay, but on the other hand, the likelihood of you, the hiring manager, let's say even you have an HR department, of your HR department spending 5 hours looking for every post, every like, every commenting, looking at forums, and also by the way, understanding imagery and symbolism and what they mean, right, is very, very low. And our system basically does this anywhere between minutes to hours, maps this and looks at like activity posting in forums and things like that, using language models, identify things that should be flagged, and basically does a report and say, hey, Eric, you're considering hiring this person. Take a look. So in theory, it's nothing you couldn't do manually, but you're going to have to spend 5-10 hours on that, and you need the expertise, the patience, the diligence, and also the willingness to look at symbols, right? And we just flag it to you and say, hey, okay, cool.
Awesome. What is the website?
hatechecker.com.
Okay.
The technology is already being used in Israel. There's insurance institutions, HMOs that are using it. And we hope to have it being used in the US with ethical corporations, with people who care, not to hire people who are anti-Semitic and support hate. It's very important for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who wants to use that. So that's wonderful. To finish, Haggai, tell us a little bit about cards. In full disclosure, I bought my own cards and I'm waiting for it with the specific logo, and I can't wait for that. But what is it exactly, and where do people can order that?
So to order it, they go to Cardsbiz, which is, I think it's upside down here, but it's
KARDZ.biz, so cards.biz.
Yeah. And, always start with a value. We help you be remarkable in face-to-face meetings. That's what we wanted to do. That's what we want to do. The way we do it is we get you a metal card with a glass finish engraved in gold or silver that shines every time, but kind of as even a kind of shining light every time you click a card, and your information is shared. And I'll tell you how our clients describe this. As I once said, it's like a power move. I put it out, and it's not. First of all, it's definitely not a paper product, and it's not a cheap piece of plastic or like a cheap metal aluminum stuff. It's impressive. It's heavy. It has presence. It looks amazing. And some of our other clients basically call it the black Amex of business cards. So you don't need business cards as much as you needed them 10 years ago. But if you do need a business card because you want to make an impression in a meeting or you're in events and you want to be remembered, Cardsbiz is the way to go.
Listen, thank you so much for spending this time with me today, listening to you. I'm again reminded of all the good and amazing people in Israel and people in technology that are using technology and their brain for goods and for building a better world. So truly appreciate and mazal, and look forward to meeting you in person in the near future.
I hope so, Eric. Sooner than later. Definitely. Cheers.
Haggai, thank you so much for sharing all these insights with me. Fascinating conversation. Thank you as well for everything you're doing and for this hatechecker.com website. And for those who want to order a digital business card with you, go to cards.biz. And I look forward to meeting you in person one day. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to connect with me, please do so on LinkedIn. And if you learned something today, please share this conversation with your network. Thank you.